Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Yesterday, I was doing a press talk, and I told the crisis in the life of a man in Pakistan. A man, a farmer, farming for about 7 to 8 generations, got devastated over the past 15 years. His name is Iqbal Solanki. He was a farmer. He got wiped out in the floods of 2010. He barely survived and came back to his farmland and got wiped out again in 2012. He left the farm for a while, tried to put food on the table for his children, and came back to farming once the water went down. And he was hit again in 2022. One flood after the other, his life got devastated. His livestock was washed away, his house was washed away, his children's schools was washed away, his family was displaced. And he finally gave up on farming and probably does some labor work somewhere in Karachi. Generations of farming lost to water. But what I didn't say yesterday is that Iqbal Solanki is not alone in this universe. If you look at the Bangladeshi farmers who wait for the water to flow, and if the water doesn't flow, then the fisherman starves and the farmer cannot farm. Same story. In Sahil, at Sahil, a woman walks about 4 miles one way to get 1 bucket of water every day. And she is to walk 4 miles because the river that flew next to her village has pulled back. And has pulled back because someone upstream has stopped the flow of the water. Every day she walks 4 miles to get 1 bucket of water to bring back to her children. This is what she did yesterday. This is what she's doing today. And this is what she would be doing tomorrow. This is not a crisis in her life. This is her life. This is her life. And the Niles and the Tigris marshes and the story of the once Aral Sea. It's the same story. It's the exact same story of Iqbal Solanki. So not only is it the story of 120 million people in Pakistan who depend upon the farmlands, but it's a global story in Africa, in Bangladesh, by the flows of Mekong, everywhere it is the same story. We look at this story either as floods or droughts. But what we don't look at it is that it's not just the story of floods or scarcity of water. It's the story of water that you do not control. The danger is not just too little water or too much water. The danger is that someone else who is not you controls the tap through which your water is going to flow. My dear friend Ahmer Bilal Soofi, my colleague, he just showed you a graph. One day, the water flowing through Marala was 1,500 cusics. Then it became 78,000 cusics. And then it fell down to 1,500 cusics. And not one drop of rain to explain that. So the only thing that explains this phenomenon is that someone else, who is not Iqbal Solanki, has his hand on the tap that controls his water. And who pays? About 50% of our population depends upon agriculture. That's give or take 120 million people. 120 million people's livelihood depend upon this water. About a quarter of our GDP and 100% of our food security depends upon the flow of this water. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, this is neither a crisis of climate nor a crisis of water. This is a crisis of justice. And that's how we would like the world to see it. Solangi didn't build the dams. Solangi didn't break any treaty. Solangi didn't elect the man who controls the tap. And yet it's Solangi's life that gets devastated. This is the crisis of justice. And it's not just water tragedy. It's not just the water tragedy. I would like you to note that the same neighbor that controls this water flow or claims that it controls the water flows is the third largest polluter of the world, third largest. And let's make it simple. You pollute, greenhouse gases, temperatures rise, glaciers melt, downstream flooding. So the country that has created the furnace, which is burning the skies and burning the glaciers and affecting floods downstream, is the same country that then controls the tap, controls the flow of the water. Now, how just is that? You burn, you flood, and you know what that burning and flooding means for us? 6,000 people dead. Over the past 15 years, 6,000 people. 6,000 people haven't died in a single war. 19,000 people injured or disabled. And 40 million people displaced, 40 million, 40, larger than most countries in Europe. Displaced for months, for 6 months. And if they're displaced for 3 months, 90 days, given our demography, 1.8 billion school days are lost. Imagine your child not going to school for 1 month. 1.8 billion school days lost. Because someone else decides when the water is going to flow and flood you. Someone else decides when the water is going to be stopped to the extent that your soil cracks because of dryness and is rendered useless forever. Someone else decides that. That is the crisis that we are talking about today. We have a treaty for this. We call it Indus Waters Treaty, which is why we are all here today. When you want to test law, you test the law at its weakest point, not the strongest point. And this treaty is one of the strongest treaties of the world, not the weakest treaty. Let me say it again. If you want to test a policy or you want to test a law, you test it at its weakest point where it breaks to make sure that the justice is delivered. Now here, this is the strongest treaty the world has seen. It has survived 3 wars between 2 nuclear powers. If this treaty doesn't hold, ladies and gentlemen, no treaty in the world is worth the weight of the paper on which it's published. No world order post-Second World War holds today if this treaty doesn't hold. Because the order that we created after the Second World War, it all came out of these treaties. So what is the value of a treaty if one powerful country, and we don't consider them powerful, but one powerful country one day gets up and says, the treaty, well, it may well be, but it doesn't apply to me. And I unilaterally put it in abeyance or suspend it or walk out of it. This is what previously led to genocides. This is why the world came together and weaved itself into these web of treaties. And one of the strongest treaties in the world, one country just gets up and says it doesn't hold anymore. I always pronounce it wrong, and I have my very dear friend Ahmer Bilal Soofi. We go way back to school days. So I'm going to, in his presence, pronounce it wrong. What is it? Pacta sunt servanda? The treaties must hold. So my view is, ladies and gentlemen, it is not that the treaty has been suspended or put in abeyance. It is simply that the treaty has been revealed. And that's all there is to it. The treaty has not been put in abeyance. The treaty has been revealed to the world. Our friends went to the court, we went to the court, and the court upheld their point of view. I mean, there have been mixed, court has given mixed judgments. Sometimes they favored us, sometimes they favored our neighboring countries, and everyone said, all right, we'll go with whatever the international courts are saying. Now here the court passed a judgment and put limits on the technical design, on the flow of water, put natural limits and decided this is how it's going to be organized. No one country can unilaterally decide what the design is going to be. No one country is going to decide how they're going to stop the flow of water from one country to another. And guess what? The country got up and said, I don't accept the jurisdiction. I don't accept the jurisdiction? So what is the jurisdiction of international courts of justice? None. So does it mean tomorrow anyone can get up, any nuclear state can get up and say, hell be upon you, I don't accept your jurisdiction, I don't accept the world order, I don't accept treaties, I don't accept rights, I don't accept justice. I just don't accept. So, ladies and gentlemen, to me, the treaty has been revealed. And in that, all treaties of the world have been revealed. So this is not a message for us. We can take care of ourselves as we have seen. No one can stop our water. But what about the rest of the world? If this precedent has been set, and if the new world order is in accordance with this new precedent, then what about the rest of the world, is my question. The water that flows through the Netherlands is French water, is Swiss water, and is German water before it becomes the Dutch water. So what about that? The water that goes to Portugal is Spain's water. What about that? So essentially, this new order that is being proposed is that no downstream country in the world